What's up, world changers? It's Nathalie Nelson Parker, and I'm so excited to present this webinar for our nonprofit or small business leaders who are ready to scale their business without depending on grants. What we're going to discuss in this webinar is how do you break free from the grant dependency cycle and move towards strategic planning and a revenue focused mindset. Listen, I don't have to tell you what's going on. You understand what's happening in the economy, you understand what's happening in society at this point. And so it's very important as we see grant opportunities dwindle that your nonprofit and your small business takes the pivot and make sure that you take those grant opportunities and turn them into revenue opportunities, right? So I'm going to help you make that switch from frustrated to funded, to move from feeling overwhelmed and be proactive in making sure that you have the revenue that you need to make the impact that you're called to make. So let's hop right in, world changers. You might be wondering, Nathalie, why are you doing this? Well, I'm a certified educator, so teaching is in my blood. I'm a public speaker, I'm an author, I'm a minister, but most of all, like you, world changers, I am serious about making an impact in the world, whether that's through blazing new trails or helping world changers like you move from stuck to successful. And so we've been able to help leaders across the countries from HBCUs all the way to nonprofit and small business owners like you. And it is important for me that you maximize your life and that you transform the world. And so, world changers, for the time that we have together, I'm going to give you everything you need to shift from grant dependency to making sure that you position your nonprofit or your small business for success. You heard what I said. So let's talk about it. We all know. And listen, there's nothing wrong with grants. I still write grants. I still have clients that have grants, but I also understand that there is limits to grant dependency. And that's why I'm so passionate about making sure that by the time you get off this webinar, you know exactly how to take all of the things that you know about writing grants, all of the skills you develop through grant writing, and know how to translate that to be able to garner contracts, right? To be able to be successfully access six-figure contracts, to be able to talk to clients, to be able to pitch your grant now as a service for your nonprofit or small business. And it's important that we make that leap because of the current context that we're experiencing, right? Grants are limited in the fact that they're temporary support, right? You may or may not get renewed. Very rarely do you see a grant that is more than 1 to 3 years, right? So you want to make sure that you make the pivot so that you can move from temporary support to guaranteed revenue, right? And so we know that those timelines are highly competitive. We know that those grant opportunities don't last, aren't sustainable. And so we want to move from that temporary support to that financial instability to stability, right? To rely on grants leads to that feast or famine cycle of we have it, we don't, and then your cash flow becomes unpredictable. We also know that grant dependency has limits because there's not a lot of growth potential there, right? It really restricts your ability to plan long term, right? It also it diminishes your ability to have sustainable expansion. And so if you're a nonprofit or small business leader and you've kind of hit your ceiling and your limits in terms of grants, I want to show you how to take those same skills and translate them to guaranteed revenue. So let's talk about some lessons that can be learned from local grant proposals, okay? What is great about starting with grants is that it gives you the proof of concept, right? You have the initial grants, it provides valuable funding, you're able to test and demonstrate your ideas with little to risk because you know it's underfunded by it's under scored by this grant opportunity. So you don't have to risk your own revenue to do that. But it also helps you to have data collection, right? Grants require you to have the metrics to become powerful. And that is such a good selling point in terms of moving your mindset from grants to partnerships, right? So you have the proof of concept, but then you also have the receipts, you have the data collection to prove that what you are doing is effective. And that is something that is worth investing in. And so let's talk about just 3 ways you can start to shift your mindset. If you're a nonprofit leader right now or a small business owner and you're thinking, where I am right now, I'm not able to get 6 figures. Where I am right now, I'm not able to land a client that big. Listen, friends, if you've received a grant, I want you to know that it is the same thing. What I'm going to show you is how to shift your mindset from that grant revenue so that you can position yourself for services, for contracts, okay? And so let me tell you this, if I can do it, you can do it, all right? So the number one thing, you have to shift from the grant mentality, right? You have to stop putting the funders at the forefront. You have to stop thinking about what you have that you're begging for money, right? You really need to look at what the market needs, right? So think of that grant not necessarily as an ask for money or request for money. You want to start to look at that grant that grant opportunity in terms of what do the market need? What does the market need? What do I offer? What solution does this program? What solution does this grant opportunity offer so that I can shift my mindset from grant dependency to contract ready? And then I need you to have a transition phase, right? How do you move from balancing grant work to building the revenue streams, right? How do I move from the ask to developing leads and generating revenue? And then 3, how do you turn the focus? How do you prioritize sustainable income over temporary funding? And for those of you who are still in the rat race of the grant cycle, I want you to know that this is a shift in your focus, but it's not a letting go of grants completely, okay? All Nathalie Nelson Parker is doing on this webinar is helping you to turn that frustration into funding and be able to access a new revenue stream in your nonprofit or small business. So let's talk about what is needed to build repeatable revenue models. Okay. You know me, for those of you who follow Nathalie Nelson Parker, Civitas, our brand, all of the things that we have to offer, you know that I'm always about the copy, paste, repeat method. All right. So I want you to think about, again, how do you take that grant opportunity and turn it into a revenue stream by offering your product, goods, or services in a market? So let's talk about customer funded models, okay? You want to be able to have predictable, reoccurring models in your nonprofit or small business that enable your strategic expansion. You want to be able to show a pathway for sustainable growth, right? So, what are some of the solutions that grow without your cost increasing? And then you want to have scalable offerings, right? What are some services clients will pay for repeatedly? All right. And I want you to take some inventory. What are some of your most successful grant opportunities? What are some of the programs that have been funded once, twice, 3 times, right? And how can you take that model and fit it into any one of these categories, right? Where it could be predictable or reoccurring, it could be expanded strategically. What is the solution that it provides, and how can it grow without any cost from you? And then what is this program, and how can it be positioned as a service that clients will pay for repeatedly? Again, we're talking about building repeatable revenue models and taking that grant opportunity and taking your frustration and making it something that can be funded. So what does that look like? That looks like starting where you are now, world changers. Whether you're a nonprofit, whether you're a small business, you have within your reach partnerships that can expand. So I want you to think about locally. Where can you secure steady revenue, whether it's through municipalities, whether it's through if you're in a city or community partnerships? What are some local contracts that are within your reach? Then I want you to think B2B or business to business relationships. What are some joint ventures that you can access with those who have an established customer base, but there's a solution that you can add to their offering and you can go after these opportunities together? Then I want you to think about expanded reach. What are some partner networks that you can use as a gateway to wider opportunities? And then, last but not least, strategic alliances, right? How can you combine your strength with another strength to enter new markets? All right. And for all of you who are on this webinar today, this is within your reach. Local contracts, business to business relationships, expanded reach, strategic alliances. Where can you start today to turn that grant dependency into revenue models and new contract opportunities? The next thing I want you to think about as you make the pivot is moving from local to national and eventually global, right? The thing about grants and grant dependency is that you have a way of reaching the ceiling, right? No matter if it's a local grant, national grant, or even sometimes when you think about global opportunities, there is a ceiling there. But when you start to do your market research, you're able to identify key players and decision makers in those target markets that moves that ceiling from, hey, just foundations, just grants to organizations, businesses, and other markets. Okay. So I want you to take the time to do that market research and identify who are the key players and decision makers in those markets that you could possibly develop relationships for and with, and that can lead to potential contract opportunities. The next thing I want you to do is think about compliance mastery. How do you navigate the legal frameworks across different jurisdictions? For some of us, that might be licensing. For some of us, that might be uh, getting or investing in coaches and business developers who can help you to navigate those areas. And for some of you, it might just be partnerships, like we talked about previously, in terms of those B2B and those strategic partners. But after you get that market research done, after you understand the compliance, right, in terms of navigating that local, national, and global landscape, then I need you to put together a procurement strategy, right? You need to understand, how do these organizations, how do these businesses contract? What is their purchasing process? What are the requirements, right? For as we moved into, and this is just a personal story to tell you how to contextualize this, when we moved into working locally as well as federally, we understood that there were some things that we had to have in place, whether it was certifications, whether it was business licenses, whether it was a certain threshold for insurances, a certain way that we had to bill, a certain way we had to invoice, right? All of those different things are important to understand so that you can position yourself to be contract ready when that procurement opportunity comes. And so that's going to come with market research, understanding the compliance, how to navigate that landscape, and then putting together a procurement strategy that positions you to be ready for those opportunities as they come. Next, World changers, I cannot stress this enough. You need to have the infrastructure, right, to be able to not only go after this procurement opportunities, these contract opportunities, but also to sustain them. So there is a level of investing in technology and automation to be able for you to scale, right? Scalability is so important. And so that's operations technology, your back of office automation, and your data integration. Those three are very important, right? And they're important because they're going to help you to advance your forecasting, but it's also going to provide you the systematization, right? You're going to have the systems available to be able to not only go after these contracts, win these contracts, but able to report, able to manage, and able to project from quarter to quarter, month to month, where you need to be in your revenue, as well as understand your cash flow so that you can better expand and how much resources you need to allocate towards planning. And so those systems and technologies are so important as we talk about moving forward and scaling. The next thing is your risk assessment, right? Market dependency evaluation. What is happening in the market? What do we have the tolerance for? What are some areas we should be aware of, right? How do you have regular compliance audits? For us, that is happening on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, right? What are we spending on? What are we bringing in? What are some things that we can cut away to be more lean? What are some areas we need to invest in so that we can bring in more clientele, more customers? What markets do we want to expand in, right? And then having a contingency scenario, right? We're working on this. If it goes well, this will happen. If it doesn't, this is the pivot. This is the plan B. Again, I'm going to go back to the previous slide. It is not possible to do this, right? Your advanced forecasting and risk assessment without having this in place. Your operations technology, your back office automation, and your data integration. It is very difficult to have the data needed, the information needed, the receipts needed to move into your forecasting and assessment if you don't take the time to do your operations technology, your back office automation, and your data integration. Okay. If you're listening to this right now and you see the slides and you're like, I don't even know what that means, then you need to go ahead and book a strategy call with us and we can walk you through what that looks like and why it's so important to move to that next level of grant dependency to revenue generation through contracts, grants, and procurement opportunities. All right, world changers. So then let's talk about financial reserves, what that should look like in terms of moving from your grant model to your income generation model through products, goods, and services. All right, you want to have 6-month operating expense as a cushion. You want to have dedicated expansion capital. And you also want to make sure that you control your debt to equity ratio. For those of you who feel like this is something that is unattainable at this moment, I want you to know that one contract at a time, you will get there. You will learn how to position your nonprofit or small business through services so that you can be able to achieve this model. So let me give you a little bit of a nugget, okay? And this was the biggest thing that made me take the leap from grant dependency to moving into contracts for our services. The way that you do that, and for us, is that any new opportunity that we have, whether we're providing a service that is multiple months that requires a retainer, or it's a new project that is 3 months, right? There is going to be a deposit that has to be made above the retainer. Okay. That is the way that you get that operating expense cushion. So every company does it differently. For some people, it could look like 30 to 40%. Some people could look like 50 to 60% of the overall contract is paid up front as a deposit. That is the way that you get that cushion so that you are not depending again on that grant kind of feast or famine cycle. But from the onset of signing that contract, you have enough to cover the revenue, you have enough revenue to cover the expenses of that project. All right. So again, for those of you who are like, Nathalie, I can't do that 6 month. That's the yes, you can. I'm showing you right now. Right. But it's that mindset shift of I can only have enough to get by and making sure that you have that cushion up front at the signing of your contract so that you have that deposit to cover those costs. All right, well, changers, I think I gave you enough to get started in making that mindset shift. Again, if you want to take a deeper dive, you want to make sure that you download our ebook where we kind of walk through this even more. 5 quick ways to position your grant work as contract ready services. And we also kind of give you examples. We also give you examples on how to do that. So you can get our ebook in the link. Also, if you haven't taken the webinar, 3 secrets to transform grant proposals into consistent revenue, you need to hop on that webinar right away. Right away, world changers. What are you waiting for? We understand that the market has changed. We understand that the environment has changed. And although you might be getting that grant now, and maybe another year, you want to make sure that you can move into a more sustainable model where you turn your frustration into funding that can continue to pay you back. If you enjoyed this webinar, do me a favor. Don't just watch it and move on. Please like, share, subscribe. We want to make sure that we can reach as many world changers like you. And all you have to do is click a button and let us know that you enjoyed this content and be able to share it with other people. So again, make sure you like, share, subscribe. All of the links to continue on with next steps are in the links below. Love you and appreciate you. And listen, world changers, it's not hard until you take the next step.